يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين
হে মানব মণ্ডলী, পৃথিবীর হালাল ও পবিত্র বস্তু সামগ্রী ভক্ষণ করো, আর শয়তানের পদাঙ্ক অনুসরণ করো না, সে নিঃসন্দেহে তোমাদের প্রকাশ্য শত্রু।
আউযু বিল্লাহি মিনাশ শাইতানির রাজীম। ইয়া আইয়ুহান নাসু কুলু মিম্মা ফিল আরদি হালালান তাইয়্যিবা ওয়া লা তাত্তাবি'উ খুতুওয়াতিশ শাইতানি ইন্নাহু লাকুম আদুউম মুবিন। إنما يأمركم بالسوء والفحشاء وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون وإذا قيل لهم اتبعوا ما أنزل الله قالوا بل نتبع ما ألفينا عليه آباءنا أولو كان آباؤهم لا يعقلون شيئا ولا يهتدون اللهم اجعلنا من المهتدين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي فالحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ثم أما بعد. Assalamu alaikum once again wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We're starting from ayah number 168 of Surah Al-Baqarah. And here, after the conversation that we had last week about trendsetters and followers, if you recall, Allah Azza wa Jal had given the warning to those who on Judgment Day, they live their lives following certain people socially and economically in their major decisions, and on Judgment Day they're hoping that they're only wishing for a chance that they could go back and not have to do that again. Cut those people off like they are cutting themselves off on Judgment Day. Now Allah turns to dunya once again. So there was a scene of the akhirah, and immediately after that, you're brought back to dunya. And this is actually a very powerful rhetorical mechanism in the Quran, that Allah Azza wa Jal will take the believer to a picture of the akhirah, and then immediately, well, now that you've seen this picture, how should your behavior change right now? What should happen to you right now? So it's like, I don't want to be in that situation, so this is what you need to do right away. So there's awamir and nawahi that come right after that. Commands and forbidding statements come right after that picture is shown. Now, in this case, the problem was that of people following others blindly. And this is not just something Muslims do, this is of course something that non-Muslims do. And actually the original context is that of people that are not Muslim, refusing to become Muslim. And that's because they're following their ancestry or their social norms or whatever it may be. In our tragic times, this is also a problem of Muslims who refuse to take Islam seriously because of their society, because of their social circle, because of their friends. I mean, I met a brother not too long ago, a Muslim brother, whose family hasn't been religious for a couple of generations, right? So they own bars. Right, and he just a couple of Ramadans ago decided that he's just going to take the religion more seriously, and for the first time realized that alcohol is haram in Islam. He didn't even know that much. He didn't even know that. So the guy decides he wants to learn more about his own religion. He's Muslim by name. So he decides he's not going to be part of the business anymore, and he's not going to drink anymore. His entire family cut him off. And they own several bars across Dallas. Like they're very successful, pub owners, and they cut him off entirely. His brother doesn't talk to him. He gets insulted. He goes to his house. He, hands him a beer. He goes, "No, I don't want to touch it." And he gets kicked out of the house. And he was in serious depression when he came to the masjid. I met him here in Irving at the masjid. The guy was seriously sad because of how his family's treating him, all because he's decided he's not going to follow the way that, they're following. So nowadays we're seeing this problem even with Muslims in whatever capacity. But this ayah is not limited to the problem of Muslims and the pressure they're feeling from the ignorance in their own families, also non-Muslims. And the fact how intimidating it can be. Oh, that's a really loud phone. Okay, so how intimidating, it can be for someone to consider Islam. And think about that even especially now, in this time, when Islam is like a hot topic and the thing to hate, the fashionable thing to hate is Islam. Imagine in some family, especially in where we are in the South, where loving America is the same as hating Islam for some people, right? You can only have one or the other. In that family, somebody's thinking about Islam. How many times would they think twice before they even, take the leap? Because they know what's going to come with that. Their entire family will come after them, There's a sister we knew, she used to teach at a school where I used to work at, and when she became Muslim, her family basically, she was from an Italian family in Long Island, and her dad basically told her, you're accepting the religion of the enemy. That's what you're doing. Like he just flat out told her. Like that's the kind of pressure that someone would have to face and be ready for when they're turning to this deen. But then Allah Azza wa Jal talks from a different perspective in the coming ayah. He basically talks about one of the things that people that are making you follow their way, what is their way? What does it boil down to? What's so appealing about their way that they're calling to it that has so much pull that the majority of humanity heads in that direction? He says, Ya ayyuhan nas, people, kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiba. Consume from whatever is in the earth, that which is permissible, halal, tayyiban, good and pure. Good, pure, permissible things are what you should be consuming. We think this is a commandment of Allah to the Muslims. But the ayah does not begin, Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, it begins, Ya ayyuhan nas. People pursue good, pure, permissible things, consume from that. And Allah is teaching us something here, that one of the great benefits of Islam, one of the great goals of Islam, is that we don't deny the world. It's not like you have to leave dunya and not enjoy any of it. But you can consume from dunya that which is halal and good and pure. And whatever Allah has made haram for us isn't good for us. And whatever Allah has made halal for us necessarily is better for us, is good for us. So Allah is giving humanity a bit of advice and saying, look, you're going down this road because all these people want to do is consume that which isn't halal and isn't tayyib. It's khabith. It's haram and khabith. It's two things. And the opposite of it is halal and tayyib. That's what Allah wants you to consume. I'll tell you a crazy story. I told some of the students this, just along these lines. I was in Massachusetts 2 weeks ago in Boston, and I met a brother who was a financial analyst. So he used to work in the financial industry, used to go back and forth between Boston and New York and Wall Street and whatever, right? So he's a finance guy. And when the subprime mortgage crisis happened, he was so disturbed by how many people lost their homes. And he used to invest in some of these firms himself, so he knows the in and outs of the financial mechanics. So he starts Googling ethical economics. That's what he starts Googling. Ethical financing, ethical economics. And some of the first links he finds is Islamic financing, Islamic economics. Like on Wikipedia and other sites. So he starts reading up on that stuff, and through just what Islam has to say about economics, the halal and tayyib in economics, he became Muslim. He became Muslim not because somebody gave da'wah to Islam directly to him, but what he saw was good and pure, something good and pure was being called for in this area that nobody calls for goodness and purity. When we talk about economics, everybody talks about the bottom line. Everybody talks about the bottom line. The only ethics they talk about, I went to business school, the only ethics they talk about is raise the minimum wage a little so people can pay the rent. And really, it's not even ethical. They say raise the minimum wage so people pay the rent, because if you don't pay the rent, they'll end up doing crimes and go to jail and you won't have a minimum wage employee. So it's good business to raise the wage a little bit. That's their ethics. It's all determined by the bottom line, But this is, Ya ayyuhan nas kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiban. And so the call being made to avoid, to swim against the tide, is to consume that which is good and pure and permissible. And here again a very important comparison, one that Shah Waliullah Dehelvi rahimahullah made. Very wise statement. He said when Muslims live in a society that is empowered by Islam, then the halal things, the good and pure things are easy to get to. The halal stuff is easy to get to. And the haram things are difficult to get to. Like in a Muslim society, the Muslim would have to make a lot of effort to get to the haram. And everything outside that's available to him would be halal. I know that doesn't work across the board in the Muslim world right now, but at least in terms of what you would call halal food. When you go travel to Saudi, or you travel to a Muslim country, or go to Pakistan, whatever, one of the things that really makes you like, oh my God, this is so much easier, is what? The food is available right there. Even though there are a lot of other haram things, right? But at least in terms of food, you taste the ease of Islam. When the Muslims empower a society with Islam, the halal becomes accessible and the haram becomes difficult to access. The exact opposite happens in a society that is run by, the push of shaitan. Haram in and of itself isn't that attractive, as shaitan makes it attractive. He beautifies it, And when he beautifies it, people pursue it and make it available, and they advertise it more, and they push it more in your face. So the Muslim in a society that is pushing kufr, is pushing the way of shaitan, they have to go out of their way to find the halal. And on the road to finding the halal, along the road, they'll find many, many exits, many offers of the haram, and they have to continuously turn those down and get to the halal. Whether it be finding a spouse, whether it be food, whether it be a job, whether, you name it. Whether it be consumption, whatever it may be. You'll have all these haram options, and you'll have to literally kind of walk through like a minefield to get to the halal option. So halal becomes difficult. One of the goals of, the victory of the deen is to make the halal easy and the haram difficult. That's what one of its goals is. And now look at the tragedy of the Muslim Ummah. I'm from Pakistan. Sometimes my family travels there. I plan on traveling there soon, Allahu A'lam when. But when my family travels there and I ask them, so how's the Muslim society? It's so much easier. My first, premature assumption was it's easy to get away from the haram. You're in a Muslim society. What are you talking about? You can't get out of the airport without paying bribes. You can't get anything done without doing something that's questionable in the deen. Every other corner you turn, there's corruption. Every other corner you turn, the haram is staring at you in the face, and you can't even go until you slip a little something in. There's a guy, there are people going for Hajj, and they stop by their home country and then they go to Hajj. So they go to Hajj, and they go to their home country, and now they're about to go to Hajj. So they know this guy is desperate. He has to make it to, the sacred land in time. So he hands the guy the passport at the counter, and the guy looks at the passport and he opens it up and says, put something in here and close it and then give it to me. Right? Because he knows he has to. So the guy is going to Hajj, he has to pay bribes before he goes. لَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Allah commanded us against this. Don't eat each other's monies using corruption, falsehood. Don't do it. This is يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا. Then Muslims should understand this from another point of view. How many Muslims are so particular? The meat has to be dhabiha. I respect that a lot. The meat has to be pure. But the money you earned to buy that meat, who cares? The guy owns a liquor store and he will only eat dhabiha meat. The money, the haram money he's taking to the slaughterhouse, and he wants to slaughter the animal himself at Eid, that's all great. It's still not halal, bro. It's still not halal. That's not halal food for you. You're feeding your family poison. What barakah will come out of that money? What barakah will come out of that food? This delusional idea that halal is only what is on the outside. It has nothing to do with what we consume, even in terms of our income. These things are connected. You can't disconnect them. You can't just take one part of the deen and forget the other part of the deen. SubhanAllah. What hypocrisy is that? So Allah makes a call to all of humanity. كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. And don't follow the footsteps of shaitan. Here these people were arguing, we're following our forefathers' footsteps. Allah says, actually no. All of what you're following, when you try to go against the halal, what is that actually? It's the footsteps of shaitan. That's all that is. Don't be confused into thinking that's your tradition, that's your culture, that's your heritage, that this is your pride and your civilization. There's none of that. That's all delusion. What it really is footsteps of shaitan. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Certainly he is a clear enemy to you. Yeah, you love your family, you love your tradition, you love your history, but you have to hate shaitan. And if he got the best of them, he shouldn't get the best of you. Don't let the love of your family tradition allow you to become a friend with shaitan. Don't let those two things get confused with each other. Another very important consideration. Sometimes our loved ones, they ask us to do questionable things. Especially for the Muslims nowadays when it comes to weddings, is a good example. They ask us to do questionable things. They ask us to, for example, take out a credit card loan, or go and do an overly extravagant wedding that's going to put everybody in a financial difficulty. Then of course the way the party is going to happen is also not exactly going to be halal, And there's going to be, dancing and this and that. And this is a typical Muslim wedding. You can't even tell the difference between that and a Christian wedding nowadays. Except for the imam that walks in for 5 minutes and everybody puts the napkin on their head. And, except for that part, you can't even tell the difference. Right? No, they hire a DJ and everything. This friend of mine back from college, right? He invited me to his wedding. And I kind of knew that it's going to be a little shady. So I was trying to get out of it somehow because I try not to be part of those kinds of gatherings. But out of respect for the family, I went at least to say salam. And the DJ he hired was the owner of the halal meat store. Okay, so the guy I buy meat from every week, right? So I walk in and this guy's like blasting music, is like in the groove. I'm like, is that you? He sees me and he puts nasheeds on. I'm like, save it, bro. I was here or not, Allah's been here, man. And he's just like avoiding eye contact. I'm like, yeah, no, this is too awesome. But this is like, and this is at a Muslim wedding, right? And I'm not passing a fatwa on music or anything, but the kind of gathering, you can tell shaitan's there. You can tell. You can tell there are no barriers, there are no restrictions between inappropriate interaction. When Muslim women are dressed and they're decked out, they can get dressed up for themselves, that's fine, but when they're dressed in a way like, I'm sorry to be offensive, but it looks, back home, the way they dress like elephants, like in Hindu tradition, and they like deck them out in all these fancy colors. They do this with buses in Pakistan. You ever see that? Those crazy colors and bells and whistles hanging. That's how they dress our women. They're like this insane colors flashing at you. This is just completely inappropriate for a public setting for a Muslim woman. For a Muslim woman. And when you ask them, why do you do that? They'll tell you, this is how we do things. What are you talking about? This is how everybody... your cousins had a wedding. What are they going to say if we don't have a wedding like this? Why are you so extreme? This is how we do things in our family. And you know what's so funny about that question? If you were to show them a picture of their own grandfather and their own grandmother, grandpa's got a big old beard, and grandma, you can't even see her face. Her face is like the chadar is hanging over the head. You can barely see her face. They're completely modest. I was like, what family tradition are you following? Even these same people that have become so, forward-thinking, they call themselves, right? They've become so forward-thinking. Even in their tradition, go a couple of stages back, couple of generations back, you'll find Islam. They've abandoned tradition. What they call tradition is a joke. What tradition is that if not Hindu tradition for us? One of my teachers, Dr. Israr Ahmed rahimahullah, one of the most painful experiences of his life, he describes it. He was invited also to a wedding. And this wedding was at the border of India and Pakistan. It was a part of Lahore that's kind of touching the border of India. It was a Muslim wedding. So he went there, he was invited, so he went. And he goes, and there's a completely inappropriate gathering, music is blasting, this and that. Asr time comes, nobody even gets up. So he kind of takes one of the tablecloths off the table, puts it on the side, and he starts making salat by himself. And a couple of people joined him. And the groom felt bad, so he joined him too. And Dr. Saab himself says, I don't think he made wudu. But he joins him anyway. And after he finishes making salat, he's looking around. And he's thinking to himself, man, not 50 miles from here, on the other end of the border, there's a Sikh wedding going on. There's a Hindu wedding going on. And there's no difference between these two weddings. You couldn't tell the difference. And he says, so what reason did not 50 years have gone by and Muslims drew this line, this border with their blood? That blood hasn't even dried yet, and look at us. There were 2 generations ago, Muslims were staying up all night in countries like Algeria, in countries like Pakistan, in countries like, in Egypt, all over the Muslim world that were occupied by foreign powers. Muslims would stay up the entire night, not even in Ramadan, every night, collectively making dua, get rid of this evil force that is on us. If you get rid of this force, Ya Allah, we will worship only you. We want our children to be able to say, La ilaha illallah. We will serve your deen. We will show you what Islam really is. Get rid of these evil forces on top of us. And Allah removed many of those forces. And what happened? What loyalty did we show Allah? This is the same exact thing Bani Israel had done, by the way. Bani Israel asked Allah for relief from oppression. And then Allah gave them freedom. And then said, let's see what you do. Let's see when you get power, let's see how you hold on to power. Let's see what you do with that power. What have the Muslims done? What do we have to show for ourselves? Subhanallah. We love talking about politics. Before you talk about bringing about change in the political spectrum, how about we talk about our family situations? How about Islam in the family? And our extended families. Those of you guys that are sitting here in the masjid, probably most of you, you're the weirdos in your family. Right? Most of your families are like, they think religion is a joke. And you guys are extreme, you've lost your way. And they look at you and they laugh and they say, that thing is still on your face? And they look at your women and they say, you're still wearing that thing? You're going to go to the Eid party looking like that? Might as well not come. That's how they'll talk to you. That's your own family. You know? This is the crazy situation we're in. We have to convince the Muslims to go to halal and tayyib. And here Allah is talking to all of humanity and saying, كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ.